Jen. And I'm Sawyer. And you're listening to Our House, A to Z.
Okay.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Hey. There it is.
School's a-coming.
Hey. Oh, please don't.
August already.
Is this the last hurrah?
Oh, my gosh.
The time is ticking.
How is that even
I
possible?
don't know.
How is that even possible?
I don't know.
And King's is around the corner.
King's is around the corner.
King's Academy.
Just over a month from opening.
Be praying for our teachers and our students and families and all the last minute crazy back to school stuff.
Oh, back to school. Back to school.
I'm so excited.
I keep feeling like there's going to be a whole bunch of last-minute enrollments. Know how like HPC is famous for last-minute registration and enrollment and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Yes. It's going to be like, and can I come?
We should take bets now.
I know. We definitely should.
You just wait until I host that thing for the guy to come and speak and do the educational night on the liberal agenda in public schools.
Oh, yeah. You're going to do that and you think that's going to be the game changer?
We're going to push enrollment right over the edge.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I think some of the classes are already full. So.
They're already full. It's true. It's true, but hopefully everybody's recovered by now from VBS.
Yep.
Just all of those families, all those little ones are blessed and feeling the momentum to keep pushing in.
Yeah.
Fall is my favorite time of year, so honestly, I can't
Don't talk
wait.
about it yet. I'm not
School
ready.
Starting back, my favorite time
I'm
of year.
enjoying my garden and all that stuff.
I love suede.
I love lamp.
I love plaid. I love
Do you really love the lamp, or are you just saying it because you saw it?
I'm sorry, what?
I love lamp.
everything fall.
Did you say you love suede?
Yeah.
You like what kind of things in suede?
I have a suede blazer that is
Hey.
like very collegiate.
And you love when I wear my suede
Everything. Suede.
pants.
Your suede everything.
I don't have suede pants.
I'll get you some now.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's coming. It's
very
Friday, but
equestrian
Sunday's
sounding.
coming. Speaking of equestrian, we wanted to talk about the first year of marriage.
The days when I was horseback riding.
I wouldn't mind that. Yeah. What do you?
I spent a lot of years horseback riding, babe.
Interesting.
At tack shops.
Do tell.
Yep.
Do tell more.
And there's not really too much to tell.
That's
just that.
Tack shops and horseback riding. Okay. Did you wear the high boots?
Yes.
Padded pants?
Yes.
Little cute blazer?
No. No blazers.
What about the little
You had to
bowl
wear
cap?
the pants that you have like on the inside of the leg. It has like the padding and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Interesting. All right. Well,
Saddles, Western, English, all the stuff.
I don't
brush
know
the
much about
horses.
it. I've actually had like a slight fear of horses that I've never really talked about
We don't
publicly.
We can save that for the fear episode.
Okay. All right.
We could do like a live yielding session maybe
Oh, really? That might be educational.
for the horse fear.
Okay.
It'd be interesting.
Might be. Anyway, first year of marriage. That could probably be another fear episode that a lot of people need.
Do you think we can tie this into early dating too? I mean, into dating or not really? Do you feel like
Well,
it's...
I think, yeah, I do. I think
I think
so.
some of the things,
if
but not all of them.
If you missed last week, we talked about dating and just relationship advice in that onset season of a relationship and not being afraid to date, not being afraid to date maybe the wrong person a couple times if it means that it leads you to, getting to know somebody else and getting to know yourself a little bit better. Oh, I didn't know that I didn't like this about somebody until I didn't like it. And now I know.
And now I know.
Thank you for that experience.
Or maybe I just needed some refining.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Hey.
Imagine the old biblical principle of refining.
Refiner's
You're
fire.
a fire.
Oh.
Refiner.
I don't know about those newfangled songs, but anyway, so that kind of leads us up. Now you've been dating a little while. Let's say you're getting a little closer. Let's say you're coming in hot on marriage.
Engagement.
Let's talk about that
marriage.
season.
Ooh.
Can I just give one big,
I know exactly what you're going to say.
you say it then?
Don't have a long engagement.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
knew it.
Oh my gosh. Why not?
It's almost like we've been married for 14 years.
Why not? Well, we've done a lot of counseling together, so.
Don't have a long engagement.
Why not?
I mean, usually I feel like the reasons that we have a long engagement are not good reasons.
Not good reasons.
I feel like if there was like he's in the service and he doesn't come back until then from like a leave, that makes total sense to me.
Except if that was the case, I'd say get married now.
Yeah, okay.
But still.
If there's like a family serious issue, health concern, and there's some sort of thing that you have to wait till such and such happens. But for the most part, I feel like we have long engagements because we want to finish school, or I want to save up this much money in my bank account, or
we got to plan.
I can only get married at such and such a location, and there's a 2.5 year wait on the venue, and Honestly, I mean,
that's true.
That's real.
That's what I love. Can I just say that's what I loved about people that got married during COVID? They said,
Like,
okay,
to heck with it.
The caterer backed out, the florist backed out, the photographer backed out, and it was like this devil may care attitude. It was like, we're getting married anyway. You know what? Forget it if we end up going to Shaw's and getting a cake.
I know.
or
And some people
whatever.
are thinking right now, like, it takes at least 8 months to plan a wedding. Like, people are getting all feisty listening to this. Who told you that?
The devil.
No. Where do we get it from?
Probably that 17 magazine or whatever that you were
Yeah.
talking about in the last episode.
Where do we get that from? Culture. Culture that
Bride
says you have
magazine,
this, you
bridal.
do this, you have this, you have your set. Here's your calendar for every month for the 24 months leading up to your wedding of what you're going to do each month.
And the longer you take to be engaged, the more money you're going to spend on it too.
For sure, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is why culture pushes that.
Yeah. There's a market.
There's a market.
Yes.
Of course there is. I just think, like, what does the Lord want?
What does
the
the
Lord
Lord
want? Like, does he want you just to burn with passion? Because what does it say in the Bible,
Talk
Zach?
about it, baby.
What does it say?
Go ahead. Talk about it.
You're better off to
Get married than
get
burn
married
with
than
lust.
burn with lust. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that somebody who's engaged is getting married. They're not choosing to not get married. They're getting married. They're just
I feel like it's a lot harder to have a longer engagement and stay pure during that time, without a doubt.
touche.
Like, for the sake of saying, well, at least we got the cake decorator we wanted.
Yeah, exactly. And I probably have said this advice on here before, and I'm just going to say it again. I'll say it forever. I don't know if we've ever talked to somebody who says, I wish that we had spent more money on the wedding. Or I wish we had had a bigger wedding, a fancier wedding. I wish we had invited more people. I wish we had spent more money and done a more elaborate this or that. By and large, if we had it to do over again, it would have been smaller. It would have been more intimate. It would have been just the people who are special to us.
And that happens like almost immediately after. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, I loved our wedding so much. It'll be like a month later, like, I guess we could have like done without a couple of things. I never even saw that. I really wanted that. I never even saw it. And people are like, well, it was there. You're like, dang it, I never even saw it.
Yeah.
I never tasted that.
Yeah. We had ice
like,
sculptures.
we had to have
Yeah.
this meal. And you're like, I didn't even get to eat it. Dang it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But guess who did? A bunch of people that you'll never see again.
Not all of them, but a lot of times you look back at your wedding stuff and you're like, why in the world were they there?
Yeah,
And of
exactly.
course, have grace for your parents, your wonderful parents who are putting on the event and participating in it. And if they
Yeah.
want some people, let them invite the people for the love.
Yes, of course.
Please don't let that be a family issue.
Don't do it. Don't do the drama thing.
Don't do the drama thing.
There's going to be enough drama around
Right.
it as it is. But yeah, so again, go smaller.
Yeah.
Go smaller. Err on the smaller. Err on the simpler. Err on the less expensive, insane thing that, just drains everyone's accounts
Mm-hmm.
and then you end up whatever. So that's coming in hot on marriage.
Coming in
that's
hot.
just the only, that's the big piece of advice I have for
Okay.
engaged couples.
All right, what about newlyweds?
Newlyweds is where we want to go here because
do it.
there's a big conversation around that first few years of marriage. They actually say that the majority of marriage failures happen in the first year. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I think you did, but it's hard to believe because you're like, oh, the honeymoon stage, whatever. The
No, when you say
second-
failures, because I can see what I would say happens in the first year of marriage when things get really hard, or you think things are getting really hard, or you feel like frustrated. I think in the first year, it can feel a little bit easier to
retreat.
yeah, I feel like a retreat starts a downward spiral for the health of your marriage.
Yeah, I would.
So I
believe
wouldn't say it doesn't end in that first year, but
but it kind of does.
proverbially, I guess.
Yeah, it kind of does. The beginning of the end.
Yeah.
And then the second highest.
I am so thirsty right now. I'm so
Really?
thirsty, and I'm sorry I'm crushing my ice and stuff. But
That's
I just
right. You can crunch your eyes.
have no water.
The second highest rate is within the first, it's either 3 or 5 years. So the first highest number of
Yeah.
divorces happen. Then the next,
And I don't like to speak that stuff, just so you know. Do you remember
I
when
don't
we
like
were
to speak it either, but-
at our
but-
7 year and people were like 7 year, like the 7 year mark is the worst year of marriage.
now see, from what I remember.
Oh, the 7 year itch. That's what people used to say. And
Oh,
I
the
was
7-year
like,
itch, yeah,
literally
that's
the
right.
7th year of marriage, I was like, what's going to happen this year? Like, nervous.
What did happen that year?
Nothing. But in my
We
head,
got
it was
married
like,
in 08, so 2015. Did anything happen? Oh, we moved into our new house, right?
well, kind of, 2014, when we
Oh,
bought it in 2014.
that was
yeah.
that really hard time that you were
2015.
talking about in the last episode. It
like, if
wasn't
I
an
can make
itch.
it through this year.
Yeah, it wasn't an itch. We just chose to do a lot of crazy
They're
things.
just like,
all
oh,
at once.
that's when guys cheat, like in their 7th year marriage because they get bored of their wives.
Smart guys don't
Isn't that
cheat.
terrible?
Yeah. at the end of the day, you have to ask why. Like you've got to be self-aware enough to say, okay, why would the first year be hard? Why would there be an itch at 7 years?
Yep.
And then there's like a big span where people like divorces drop way, way low. And then they pick up again at like the empty nest thing.
Yeah.
That's like a more
That's a newer
modern
trend for sure.
But it's couples that stay together for their kids.
Right.
And then their kids grow up and then they're like, oh, we don't even know each other. We don't even like each other. Like,
right.
Let's just go our separate ways and, whatever.
Okay, so what do you do as a couple who's like, divorce is not an option, which is where we stand? Like, that's our conversation. That is our counsel. That is not an option for us. So we don't want people to be in unhealthy, miserable marriages, just stuck saying, well, I can't get divorced. It's not an option. So how do we make sure that our marriages are thriving and we are taking care of them and cultivating them and not just...
I think you just don't be ignorant to the things that make them hard.
Yeah.
I just think that so many of our things that we've gotten through over the years, I feel like we might both be emotional. We might both be a little selfish in them. We might both be defensive. We might both
we never get defensive.
That's true, yeah, just not us. We're too good at it. That's the problem. It makes our arguments very interesting. But I think that there's been a part of us that has known, I know what's behind this. Like, I know what this is. Like, we see this. Like, we might still have a little bit of spark in us to argue it out a little bit, hash it out a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, that's why I feel like I don't know if we've ever had a fight that's lasted more than a day. Have we? Be honest.
I've been mad at you for more than a day. Is that what you're asking? Or actually, like, fight?
Yeah, like a heated thing. I don't know. I don't look back and think of like, yeah, we have these arguments that are like –
days.
That like last –
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of it is because when the emotion settles a little bit, we're like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. Even though that person like really failed or really bombed or really screwed up, I get it. And I think that just being able to have the self-awareness and the situational awareness of it's the first year we're still figuring things out. It's the first year I married someone who's different than me. It's the first year. It's the third year. It's the seventh year. And we've been through a lot now and we kind of like know each other and maybe we need to pray about ways to spice things up or make things interesting or do something different. Maybe we've been doing the same vacation. Maybe we've been spending all of our free time with this family. Maybe we need to do whatever. Switch it up. Plan something else.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else.
I feel like newlywed couples, I personally feel like fall on one or two sides of that healthier middle ground. And one is like the honeymoon stage where it's kind of like everything is rainbows and butterflies and you don't really want to take any advice yet, or you kind of see anybody who is trying to give advice or struggling with something or kind of like seeing the potential, kind of guard and potential hazards to look forward to, you're kind of irritated by them because you're like, you're just speaking negatively over my marriage. Like, we don't receive that, like all that kind of stuff. I feel like the other side, the other extreme is it just always seems toxic and unhealthy, like right out of the gate.
Okay.
I feel like our hope today is to give encouragement to those who feel like they're in a very, like maybe an unhealthy, you're in your early marriage and you're kind of thinking, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe this was not a good idea. Like there were too many things. My uncle was right. I shouldn't have married this person. Like all of that stuff that's coming back to you because you're dealing with so much frustration.
Did Uncle Kevin say that?
Uncle Kevin.
Thought he liked me.
Or the other side, that the honeymoon couple, our goal for you is to kind of give you tools for the future because the honeymoon doesn't last forever. It's not supposed to.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to. So enjoy it. Absolutely. Yeah. Enjoy every second of that because it's amazing. But also be ready for like when the love of your life like disappoints you because they are flesh.
Yeah. And I have some advice for this too.
You do?
Yeah, I have just one thing.
We haven't even started the advice yet. I'm just saying who we're giving the advice to.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're giving advice to both these parties.
All right, go.
I want to say that when you have a concern, when you have a criticism, when you feel like there's something wrong in your marriage, when you want to bring that to the attention of your spouse, I highly recommend starting by saying, how do you feel like things are going?
Is that why you ask me that question all the time?
I don't ask you that question all the time. Actually, sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. And sometimes you ask me too. And there's a couple of reasons for doing that. Number one, I think the most important reason is because you need to be selfless. And if this turns into a conversation or an argument or a discussion or whatever, if it turns into something, you need to allow that to happen, not because you're out there projecting all of your issues on your marriage. I think that you start off with the selfless, sacrificial thing of saying like, hey, what's your perspective on this? Like, hey, I've been thinking about X lately. I've been thinking about our finances. I've been thinking about like the bills that we're paying and, you know, and thinking of where some of the strain is financially. And what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like this is the best we can do here? Or do you think there's like some changes we could make or should make? Let's sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
By doing that, you may have to exercise a lot of self-control instead of being like, what the heck are you spending money on?
Wait, did you say exercise self-control and communication?
I know. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
But that's such a blanket
I know.
cliche thing.
I know.
That's why I'm saying specifically when you're bringing a concern or criticism to your spouse's attention, start by asking them how they feel about that particular
Right.
situation. Now, if you end up doing this every day, they're
gonna
going to
catch on.
They're going to know.
They're
what's
gonna catch on.
Yeah, they're going to see right through it. But that's okay, because honestly, even if you have a concern or criticism every day, you should get in the habit of it not being about your criticism.
Yeah.
It should be about, hey, what's this other person feel about where our marriage is in regards to sex, in regards to, hey, do you think we're busy? I feel like we're busy. I feel like we're just like running around all the time like chickens with our heads cut off. But before I say that out loud, what do you think? How do you feel like our calendar looks? Like, have you pulled up our like Google calendar? Like, I think by doing that, sometimes you're enabling the other person to make an observation that they wouldn't have otherwise made, but without it being charged, emotionally charged, argumentatively charged.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I feel like one of the best ways that I practice engaging about something I'm frustrated with is kind of telling you how I'm feeling. Like, instead of saying, you did this, like, as much as I want to just like yell and point fingers and be like, I can't believe you did this. Like, what were you doing with such and such or whatever? I usually try to like take some time. I'm like a time person. I like to have some time before a conversation. I like to take some deep breaths. And then I kind of need to be in a good mental place. And then I'll say to you how I'm feeling. Like, I am feeling like just really hurt. Like, I'm feeling really sad. I'm feeling frustrated. Like, I need you to know I'm feeling very frustrated right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you why I'm feeling frustrated or how I'm feeling, like my perspective in this. And then it's like, okay, now, like what? Like, give me your side of the story.
And what do I usually respond with? How do I respond to
I
that?
don't know. It depends on the situation.
I think I'm kind of like, should we skip right to the makeup sex?
Oh, my
Or
gosh.
Just kidding. No, I do want to be attentive to that. I'm
Well, I
probably
think about
not
that's how we
always
talk
good
to
at it, but-
kids too. You know, you're like, okay, before you just start screaming about something and pointing fingers, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I was actually just doing one of the classes, and they were like, I'm feeling disappointed that I don't have that paintbrush. You're like, okay, you're feeling disappointed. Like, I know it sounds like super like cheesy and clinical and crazy and clinical or something.
Yeah.
But there's something to say like, okay, I want you to acknowledge like this is how I'm feeling. I'm going to let you know how I'm feeling before I start like just ripping at you and pointing fingers just because you're the reason I feel like this.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think sometimes when we start like that, it does put our eyes on ourselves to say, okay, I'm feeling this way, and a good chance that I'm feeling this way is because of something about me that allows
Right.
my emotions to be here right now.
Well, and also like when you engage by asking the other person or wondering how they're feeling or being conscious that they may have an observation too, you're also hopefully opening yourself up. And the goal is to open yourself up to the fact that they may present to you an entirely different
Correct.
perspective. That's like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
I'm so glad this didn't
Yes.
start off as a fight, because
Right.
it doesn't even need to go to a fight. They're seeing something that I didn't even think about. So to think of it that way and to allow yourself to be shifted.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be tweaked. Allow
Right.
yourself, instead of just digging my heels in the mud and I'm going to be mad about this because it's worth being mad about. It's like, well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't.
Right.
And maybe it's worth being mad about, but not as mad as you are.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times things are done out of ignorance. Or an example is like, your driving stresses me out. So I will say, when you do this, like, I'm just letting you know, like, when you're driving fast, it makes me feel like you don't care how I feel.
Right.
Like, it's like you don't acknowledge how I feel because you know it's like stressful to me.
Yeah.
but you're not seeing me or caring about me.
Yes. And
Instead of, what are you doing? Like screaming, and I don't know. What do screaming people do? I don't know.
You don't know because you're not a screamer.
I'm not a screamer, but I feel like I imagine it would be aggressive and
sure
ugly.
I think that we've all got to practice some self-control. And I think also just because you're not a screamer, and for those of you out there, if you are the more composed one in the relationship, that doesn't mean that you're always right.
It doesn't mean you're always right. And it doesn't mean just like I can very calmly say really snide things.
Well, and that's the thing. Very, very calmly.
Very, very calmly.
Very calmly. Very snide. Very snide. And very manipulative. And
Zachary Thomas
I'm
Lenz.
just kidding. You can't manipulate me. Not anymore. But I do think
Like I have you figured out.
Yeah. No, I definitely don't. I'm not even going to pretend like that. But I do feel like we've got to be careful, and we've got to like know when we're pushing buttons and pulling strings, and when we're doing things like, I will use my bad driving as leverage to get you out of the house earlier. So it's like, well, I won't have to speed all the way to church.
Are you going to try to tell people right now that you only drive poorly when you're late? Because I know that for a fact that's a lie from the pit of hell.
I drive especially poorly on purpose as a means of leverage to get our family out of the house faster.
All right. So when you don't
Sunday
come out of the
mornings.
house on time,
Especially on Sunday
when
mornings.
you're late, what can I do for leverage? That's what I'm wondering. What I can use.
I think you have leverage. I think you do.
I'm
not
ready
saying
to
that
use
we should. If only you would use that leverage more often. So I love marriage too. I'm glad you said that. I think it was our last episode, and you were talking about just like you are a lover of marriage and a protector of marriage. And I think that we should all be that. I was just writing an email to a woman that I had a meeting with, and we had counseled her, and she made some really hard decisions about her marriage and where she was going to church and, different things she was involved in an attempt to honor that. And I was writing her and saying, like, I want you to know God honors the way you've protected this covenant. And it's more important than us getting what we want.
Yeah.
It's more important than us feeling like we had the last word.
Wait, you probably need to say that again. You
What?
probably need to say that again. Like your marriage and covenant are more important than you getting what you want.
God honors the way we protect our covenant. And the fact that protecting that covenant is more important than protecting my own self-interests, protecting me getting what I want at the end of the day.
And I know that's hard to hear for people because I think sometimes we can feel like, but I never get what I want. Like I never get what I want. So what do you say to those people who are kind of on that end, like feel like either I'm the one always sacrificing or it's always about the other because they're a better arguer or they're the husband. So they kind of like choose to let. Yeah.
Well, in those relationships, I'd say a couple things. Number one, like, don't make marriage counseling a last resort. Like, go sit down with another couple, get into a married couples class, where you're receiving good, godly, biblical like dialogue and direction and discipleship for your marriage. Marriages need to be discipled, not just people. We've seen marriages where both parties, the husband and the wife, are getting really intense discipleship, but their marriage is like failing.
Yep.
Because what the marriage needs is actually being neglected. So, I think that I think that especially for those first couple of years of marriage, you've got to set a precedent of prioritizing your covenant.
It's good. I like it.
Yeah. What else you got?
I was going to hit some of the common frustrations.
Let's do it.
All right. So I know one that we've talked about before, and I don't know if we should just refer a previous podcast to, but it, of course, is money and finances. Always like a hot button issue, especially in early marriage. And I feel like mostly until you get into like a groove of like learning what you've sacrificed, learning what the other person has sacrificed, kind of getting on the same page, squeezing in a little bit from like where you took your firm stance earlier. And, but it's hard. Like there's no getting around it. Like we all see money and finances so differently coming into marriage, but that is to be expected. That should not be something that's shocking. That should not be this is not going to work because. That should not be like a cancel button. You are not the same person. You were raised differently. You saw money differently. Your mind works differently. How do we get on the same page with money?
Right. Yeah, I think it makes sense that that's a frustration. And I've always said that money is unfortunately too powerful of a thing to keep divided and expect our marriages to be united. And so I think we have to do whatever we need to do to get that on the same page. And I mean, we don't have to go deep into that, but just knowing that that's an issue and an underlying issue. I think sometimes one of the two of us either a husband or a wife, is too afraid to try to resolve a money issue, so it becomes the underlying thing, and then other stuff comes out. Other stuff comes to the surface. Oftentimes petty, stupid things come to the surface, and that's what we fight over, but that's not really what it's about. It's really about the fact that we have very different views on finances.
Right.
You know?
All right. So I wish there was like some broad advice to give people. I'm going to have Ben put the money podcast in the notes for today.
Okay.
So then you can check that out. And of course, get counsel on that if you need more help money-wise. All right. So another one is in-laws.
Yeah.
Tricky situation.
Well, man.
Do a whole podcast on it.
We've heard some stories.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. We've heard some stories. Yeah, that's a really tricky one. What would you say?
What would I say about in-laws? I'm trying to think of what the most common like struggles are for people.
I mean, we hear a lot of people who are like the pressure of where do we spend Christmas, where do we spend Easter.
Yeah.
Some people just figure it out by saying, okay, we're going to do everything every other year. Some people do that. Some people are like, well, it deals with geography and proximity and, you know, maybe the money's not there to travel overseas to be with my family.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that just with other, like as with other things in marriage, I feel like seasons change for that. Sometimes like your in-law situation, set up, travel, visits can look different in your first few years of marriage than it does after you have 3 kids and you're like, yeah, we can't travel anymore. Like this has to change. This has to shift. And I think the important thing to always go back to, some really broad things, is let the spouse be the one who does the communicating with, especially the hard most specifically the harder communications with their own family. So if you're a husband with frustrations about your mother-in-law or your father-in-law, instead of you like calling and telling your father-in-law what the new parameters are for your marriage, allow your wife to handle that. I feel like that's the best, especially in the beginning as relationships are growing. I think coming in hot on the other side, I feel like it can draw a lot of walls and lines and force the spouse that's the relative to be the one put in a predicament where they have to pick sides. And I don't feel like that's right to do.
Agreed.
So that's one thing. And I think the other thing is always remember that your spouse comes first. Those are all important things. And
just be really sensitive to what feels like a threat to your spouse.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't feel like a threat to you. If you have an maybe uncommonly close relationship with someone in your side of the family or whatever it is, and something about that makes your spouse uncomfortable, like be sensitive to that. And also acknowledge that maybe there is something about it that's like
that you've just always seen as normal or accepted or been used to or something like that.
Right.
Again, just broad strokes over these. Next one is my personal. This is our hardest thing. And I don't want to say it still is because I don't feel like it still is necessarily, but it was our hardest in our first few years of marriage is time management and schedules. I feel like that was the hardest, most frustrating thing for me was getting on the same page with how you do time.
Yeah.
What do you have to say for yourself, Zachary?
Absolutely nothing. I have nothing to say. So what got fixed over the years?
I mean, we had a Google Calendar.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing a shared Google Calendar, which was very helpful. It took you a while to figure out that like once you told people you were going to do something that you then need to put it into a calendar. So either you remembered or so I'd know that you had a plan for something.
Yeah. And then we got a Haley.
Haley helps with that too.
We got a Haley. She puts everything in there for us.
And then the other thing that was hard was we had to get on the same page with language. I feel like one of the struggles when we dated or engaged early marriage was I would say things like, he's like, oh, I'm going to go to this rehearsal. And you're like, oh, okay, when are you coming back? And it's like, later. You're like, can I have like a little bit more
much later
specific of a time? When we were dating, he'd say, oh, yeah, if I get out, I'm going to come by the house. Like my parents' house. I was living here. And you're like, oh, but are you? And then like he wouldn't come, or sometimes he would, and I was just like, I just need to know yes or no. Like, if you're not sure, don't come.
Yeah.
I actually remember telling you that. Like, if you're not sure if you can come, just don't. Because I don't want to, like, I'm not doing this.
Because it didn't matter to you that I wanted to and I was going to try.
No, because if you wanted to, I know you so well that if there is something you want to do, you are doing it.
That's not
so
true.
You'll leave something early. You will leave something early. You will do whatever you want. It's if that is what you felt like doing at that time.
Yeah.
So, which is fine, but I wanted to be able to make plans. I would want to do something. I wasn't going to like sit home. And so that was something we had to learn early on. And now I feel like a lot of it is a way better because we know how to communicate it better about it.
Yeah.
But I would still say our biggest frustrations, or if we are ever arguing, is usually related to time management.
Yeah, it's
hard.
still there.
Yep.
It's still there. And what would I say about that?
What would you say your advice is?
I'd say get that Google Calendar going early. I mean, get that going when you're engaged.
Yeah.
And just know that your calendar, just like all the money in your wallet and all the money in your bank account and all the money in your 401k, it's your spouse's. Well, all the minutes in your day, all the hours in your week, all the weeks.
What?
They're your spouse's.
I'm writing this down.
Write it down. I think they're your spouses,
Yeah.
and then to the spouse, understand like what the passion and the heart and the calling of your spouse is,
Right.
and be considerate of that
Yep.
when you're fussing about how many hours or whatever it is that they're.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, I talk to a lot of women who I get frustrated with their husbands' jobs, like are frustrated when they go to work. And I remember being there. I remember being frustrated and feeling like a job was a competition. You cannot view your husband's job as a competition. That is the reason you have a roof over your head a lot of times. So what was your option for them not to work? And now it's like, well, he can work from home. Like, he can do things from home.
No, he can't.
No, he
He
can't.
can't work from home.
No, he can't. And he has to work. He has to get paid. And a lot of times I feel like I talk to a lot of wives that is a frustration, is the commitment to the job. Your husband has a job. He has to get it done. The more you complain and are more frustrating and are more annoying, the less he's going to want to be home, and the more more hours he's going to want to work. So make it exciting to come home. Make it worth coming home, and
Why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
try not to be that nagging wife that we hear about in Proverbs, right? We don't want to be the nagging woman. We don't want to be the dripping faucet.
Yeah. I love Steve and Heather talk about how Steve and Heather Paiva are just some marriage gurus here that are good friends of ours, and they're just amazing, weighing in on all this stuff. And they were talking about how, like, before there were cell phones, you like couldn't wait to talk to your spouse.
Right.
You know, you couldn't wait to get home to like just talk to them. And then with the dawn of the cell phone, it's like, and then the text messaging, and it's like, it doesn't stop. The conversation doesn't stop. So
And if it does, like, you don't want to go home because you're going to be like in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And I love hearing their take on this. Like, you know what? Like, it was like a highlight if you got a phone call in the middle of the day
Right.
on your lunch break or whatever it was. If they happened to slow down for 5 minutes long enough to, to call you. But otherwise, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, the whole distance makes the heart grow fonder. I think we're missing some fond hearts today because there's not enough distance. There's not enough, like, and I know that there's some fear, and some people have had relationships where there's been, brokenness and mistrust. And so now it's like, well, I'm going to keep this thing on a tight leash. But that's not always the answer. So sometimes it can be part of the problem and not the solution.
Another thing I just wanted to hit really quick is the late spouse. I feel like a lot of times that there's couples and there's one that's always very late, and it like totally stresses out the other one. And it can lead to fights and frustration and all of that. And my advice for you, if you are the late person, is to honor the fact that somebody wants to be somewhere on time. Get up earlier. Get up earlier. I know it's hard. Start earlier. Start earlier. If you are the spouse that wants to be on time, get up earlier. Get up earlier. Be an extra set of hands that's helping. Help get kids ready. Help get the house prepped. Go let the dog out. All the things that have to be done before you leave in the morning, instead of just getting up and going out to the car and being like, I can't believe you're late again, you could get up early and say, is there anything I can help you with this morning that can help us be on time today?
Right.
But nobody wants to do those things. We just want to complain about what somebody else is not doing or how they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And we're trying to serve each other. We're trying to serve each other, not just complain about each other.
It's fair. It's good.
Okay. Do we have time to do another one, or do we feel like
we're pushing it? If we do it fast, what do you got?
Oh gosh.
Hit me with it.
Oh gosh.
Hit me with your passion.
Oh. I think I'm going to do, we already did an episode on intimacy recently, so we won't do that one. We can either pick one of these, dealing with things that are annoying, like annoying habits and getting used to like over people's things, or the all too frustrating housework, sharing of chores.
Oh, I thought you were going to go to personal hygiene.
No, I'm not going to personal hygiene.
Oh, man. Okay. I
feel like that can be in some things that are annoying.
Yeah, it's
true. You can
true.
include that in there.
Well, the annoying habits is it sounds petty, but it's not. And that usually comes down to communication and selflessness, usually. But I do think that the housework thing, that comes back to expectations.
Yeah.
And I am meeting with a couple now, and they're just awesome couple. God's doing so much in them. But they talk about how, so one of them, their love language is acts of service. And so when they're doing everything in the house by themselves and not seeing the stuff on behalf of from the other person, it's depleting their love tank, right? There's not the acts of service. While the other one grew up in a home where that parent did all of that house stuff.
Yep.
And was never felt less loved because of it.
Yep.
In fact, that was her loving
way of loving.
Yes,
right.
She would feel awkward. Maybe the mom in that scenario would feel awkward if the husband tried to do some of the house stuff. But then you end up marrying a woman who, wait a minute, no, I want us doing this together.
Yep.
And so discovering that, and then it's instead of looking at it like work with the house stuff, if there's stuff that your spouse needs you to do or wants you to do, like you look at it as like a way that you are very easily contributing to the desired outcome.
Right.
Not that you need to turn around and be selfish again, but it's like, hey, if I can do this and it's one less thing that makes my wife exhausted at the end of the day or tired or frustrated or easily irritable or whatever it is, isn't it worth it?
I know. So this is, to me, is like, just be a little bit like intentional. Be noticing what your spouse is doing or what they're trying to do or what is, like, I think about this. Okay, for example, the trash. The trash is one of Zach's thing. He takes out the trash now that the boys are getting older, they take in the trash cans. And every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, boys, run the trash out if I think about it or whatever. But usually Tuesday nights, the trash goes out. You're at prayer. And there is something in, I think, both spouses, but I know mostly women, that want our husbands to forget something or miss it so that we can hold it over their heads later and bring it up later.
Wow.
What I'm
really?
going to tell you,
I didn't know that.
I know, it's unfortunate.
Jeez.
Is how selfish that is. And so I very well could remember that the trash needs to go out on Tuesday night and not say anything about it. And Wednesday morning when the trash truck comes, be like, I can't believe you failed again. Like, I can't believe you forgot to put the trash out.
Again?
Jeez. Or, this is just an example.
I know.
I'm trying to give examples.
It's real life.
But this is real life for us with that. On trash day, what I try to do is if I can't take the trash out on Tuesday night, I'll try to remind Zach, or I intentionally tie a bag and I leave it in front of the door he comes through so that I remembers, oh, it's trash. Like, I'm going to bring that out and bring the trash out on Tuesday nights. It's just a way that it works for us so he doesn't forget. I still don't have to do it. And I'm not intentionally allowing him to forget, so I have like something to hold over his head.
It's fair. Thank you.
I think we need to do more of that. I think people need to do more of that. Like, if you want your husband to help do the dishes, say, hey, is there any way you could help me do the dishes tonight? Any chance you could do the dishes while I go put the kids to bed? It ends up in a lot less fights because we are communicating. We are, more importantly, communicating our expectations. And
guys are pretty simple. Like, we will oftentimes do something to your surprise.
But again, communicate expectations. You have them. He has them. We have to communicate them to our spouses, or they're bound for failure out of just like ignorance, unfortunately. So I would say that as far as like house chores, or if you are a couple that just wants to break them up and you're like, these are the things you do, these are the things I do, by all means, if that works for you guys, do it that way.
Yeah.
But figure it out. Figure out a way that it's going to work, that not one person feels like they're drowning or doing everything or all of that, while one person just comes home and sits on the couch and watches TV all night. That's not going to work if it's important to somebody else, if it's important to the spouse. So,
but if one spouse likes to come home and watch TV, like let them for a little bit.
Yep.
You know,
communication.
All right, good. I think
that was a lot. That might have been too much.
It's a really long episode. It's a really long episode, but you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it. We've got to take care of our marriages. So let's go ahead and close in prayer. Lord, we thank you for the gift of this covenant. We thank you for marriage, and we thank you that you are walking alongside us in this, Lord. You fill us with your Spirit so that our marriages are greater than the sum of their parts. And so we just submit them into your hands, God, and we pray that we would do our part by the power of your Spirit and your word within us, Lord, that we would rise to the occasion of dying to ourselves so that our marriages can better reflect who you are. So help us, Lord. Help our young couples, God, the ones with little babies and babies on the way, the ones that are just married and figuring it out. God, I pray that that season of adjustment would be one that is just the right amount of pain and frustration as needed, Lord, so that we are conscious of how we can better serve each other. So we love you. We give you the glory for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, Our House friends and family, thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll see you here next Friday.
This is Messer. And I'm Willa. This is Our House from A to Z. Thanks for coming over.
It's a rite of passage.